This is Rudy.
This is Flick.
We are up to episode 51 of the Left of the Dial podcast. And this week, Left of the Dial podcast goes to the movies. We're going to highlight great music moments in film from our world. We're definitely excited to get into this one. I think we did more pre-talk on this topic than we have in a long time. So I think we're locked, loaded, and ready to go. We're going to get to that. We do have some sad news, though, to share this week as well, Mr. Flick.
Yeah, really sad. Okay, so this week we lost Frederick Nathaniel Hibbert, better known to the world as simply Toots, of course, of Toots and the Maytals. Died from complications from the coronavirus at age 77. I love Toots and the Maytals. I'm not, like reggae definitely isn't something I'm super well versed in, like like a lot of other musical genres. Toots and the Maytals are really, for me, like as good as it gets, though. And and actually I've been listening to them a lot just recently too, and so it's just one of those things where the timing, there was something about the timing of this one as well as everything else, but yeah, Toots Hibbert was somebody that, not only was he a reggae pioneer, he even coined the term reggae. So he gave it the name, and was somebody that was, along with being the pioneer, he was a pioneer of reggae, but not a purist by any sense. He was very influenced by soul music, very influenced by Otis Redding, and I think you hear a lot of Otis Redding in his singing, and not only that, I think he had like a very similarly he had a very infectious charisma about him, the way that Otis Redding had, and somebody that just I think is a really big loss to the world of music.
Yeah, what's the real shame is he had a new record coming out. You know what I mean? I feel like Toots and the Maytals.
Yeah, go ahead. It did come out at the end of August.
Right. So he had new music. He was still active. He really is one of the last connections to the origins of reggae. I think people forget that Jamaica is a relatively small country. I think it has like 5 or 6 million people total. I can't think of many countries that small that have put out that much incredible world-changing music. And we talk about the people from Jamaica whose music has changed the world and changed the way that the world sees Jamaica. You have to include Toots and the Maytals in there. I was a kid I was not even born when a lot of the classic records came out, like 54, 46 and Pressure Drop. But I was a Clash fan as a kid. And if you were a Clash fan, you got to hear their cover of Pressure Drop, and that's how I found them, is via the Clash. Like, they're really fundamental to not just their influence is global. It's not just musical; it's human, and those songs endure, and they've been picked up by tons and tons of groups. And again, like you mentioned, he's an omnivore. His covers were really good too. So just a great entertainer, a great songwriter, a cultural icon. The music is important. He was important. For us to lose him this way in a year when we're losing so many people is just another one of these absolute epic bummers that that 2020 serves up. I think you made a great playlist. We both, I think, would say, even though he didn't, he's got decades and decades of music, it's pretty hard to front on 54, 46 as being way up there. I also knew that. I think it's Yellow Man has dropped that in. There's some other covers. I'm going to put on those in the playlist too. But great song. Never tire of that one. Never.
Yeah, and then everybody, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people know Pressure Drop. And that's covered by the Clash, as you mentioned. Covered by a lot of people. Izzy Stradlin also covered it, I remember. 5446 was my number, is my personal favorite Toots and the Maytals song, and that was, that was the one that every now and then I just crave listening to that, and then that not too long ago kind of set me back on a big Toots and the Maytals kick, and and I don't know. Yeah, 5446 was my number. Was a song that he wrote after spending 18 months in prison for marijuana possession. Uh,
Yeah,
so
it's just
kind of a
ridiculous.
yeah, bit stiff. But yeah, you mentioned the covers. I love his cover of Country Road. You're not gonna get a reggae version of a John Denver song many places, but he did a great version of that. He did a great version of "You Really Got Me" by the Kinks. Recently, I stumbled across a Radiohead cover that he did, cover of "Let Down," which happens to be one of my favorite Radiohead songs, and it was on a reggae tribute to Radiohead, which you figured that could be really hit or miss, but this was definitely a hit. Um, just like he did with the other covers, he just really made it his own, and if he was going to cover a song, there was a good chance that he could outdo the original.
Yep. There was a lot of there is some love of country music in Jamaica. There's quite a few good covers, but none better than that one. I want to throw in a quick recommendation. Obviously, any compilation of Toot stuff is good enough to start. But if you find it in a record store, it's still in print. It's a little on the expensive side, but there is a 4-disc set that came out in the early '90s called "Tougher Than Tough: The Story of Jamaican Music." 5446 is on there. It's sandwiched in between, or it comes right after Desmond Decker's Israelites. Like that second disc just is. It's like the Tighten Up era. Is you just can't beat it. It's not on Spotify, or I just straight up linked to it. But look it up. Discogs has it. You could get it for 20-25 bucks if you wanted to. Story of Jamaican Music, Tougher Than Tough. It's a box set, 4 years old, 4 discs, 1993. Definitely dig it up. And when you hear 5446 in the context, like, just realize what a towering song it is in the history of Jamaican music. It's just fantastic. Just fantastic. It really is a bummer. You know what? This is maybe I don't want to go down the rabbit hole here too much, but like, that's one of those groups that I always thought I'd get a chance to see, but I never made a priority of it. You know what I mean? Like, the
Yeah.
Maytals were around, like, especially when I was living in Northern California, like every reggae festival from Crescent City, down to Santa Cruz. I would guess you'd see him there a couple times a year, and I just never went, and I blew it. And it's just a bummer. It's a bummer the whole way around.
Yeah, he would have been great to see, because I've seen live footage, and that is the thing. He had this charisma about him that I mean, for instance, that they started out as just the Maytals. It wasn't Toots and the Maytals, but whoever his manager, or their manager, or somebody along those lines, you know, they basically made the executive decision that, when you see them on stage, your eyes are not ever going to come off Toots because of his charisma. And so then they became Toots and the Maytals because of that. And another little bit of trivia, Dr. Hibbert on The Simpsons did get that name because of them.
I would have never known that.
Yep. So that's a little side note there.
Nice.
But yeah, it's just I think a big loss. He certainly led a full life, but just a great one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bummer. But playlist is up on our Spotify. Definitely give that one a spin. I would hope you know who we're talking about, but if you don't, you have to rush and get that stuff in your ears, because it's fundamental. Like, if you love music and it's not part of your repertoire, you try a little harder and get in there.
Yeah, and another quick recommendation too, because it's not a Toots and the Maytals album. It's like the one that he did just as Toots, but Toots in Memphis. I'm just going to recommend it because, one, it's good, and it's him doing soul covers, which I'm a pretty easy sell on that. but also, because if you're looking up Toots and the Maytals, you might not come across that just because it's only in his name.
Good call. So are we up to our topic of the week?
Yeah, that's right.
So why don't you give the rundown here of of what we're doing? In fact, sir, out of deference, you may also go first.
Okay, yeah. So this is Left of the Dial at the Movies, I guess, and a couple weeks ago we are having the conversation about the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and how you're not as big a fan of the movies and not as big a fan of the soundtracks, but I really like the way that they use music in those movies. Um, and so and that wasn't like the genesis of it. This is like an idea that we've been kicking around for a while. It was just a matter of when we would do it. You're not as big a movie fan as I am, and I probably like 10% of the movies I see, if that. Um, and I don't see a whole lot of movies, so I think we're both very tough critics. But you're you're almost anti-movie in a way.
Kinda.
Uh, Kind of, yeah. And so it wasn't the easiest topic to get going. Like, it wasn't one that, as soon as we came up with the idea, we got to do it right away just because of that. But it's one I was really wanting to do for a long time. And the soundtrack conversation that we had a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, I'm not sure anymore, was basically why I thought, yeah, maybe now's the time to do it.
I'm not complaining about us doing it, but I would say that the most soundtracks are better than most movies, and I don't think that's a hot take. I don't.
Well, I mean, I am in agreement that most movies are not good. Most movies are just kind of product to fill time. Um, and I don't really focus on those. I don't really think about those when I think about movies. I think about, the 10% or whatever the number is that I like, and I don't worry about the rest that are just kind of, basically assembly line stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good use for music. I really, my list focuses not only on the music that I like in movies, but movies that I like a lot.
Well, I'm going to give you a chance here. Look, I think this is a show we could do on a recurring basis, but on the off chance we didn't, I did front load my list, and I'm going to start. We're going to empty the cannons right from the beginning. So I want to give you a chance to sort of build some natural pacing in here. That's why I refuse to go first today.
Okay. All right. So my list, which you can find on our Spotify page, which I've entitled "For a Life of Cinema," which play on Hank Williams there. I am going to start off my list since we had the discussion, since it kind of came out of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and there are a lot of things in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. A lot of great music. Then there's also like the stuff, that's sort of cheesier, like Pina Colada and whatever. But overall, like, it's a good selection of music. Some hits, some not so much. Great songs like Moon Age Daydream by David Bowie, for instance. The song I'm pulling out is Cherry Bomb by the Runaways, partially because I finally saw the movie about the Runaways this past weekend, and also it's like a really good montage in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, where they're kind of hatching out the plan that leads up to the climax of the big action scene that the movie goes out on, and it really, like, the energy of the Runaways, I think really works well with that scene. And just a kick-ass song and a kick-ass movie and a kick-ass scene and a kick-ass movie.
All right, I'm gonna save my hot takes for later. We're gonna come back to this. I'm gonna unload the cannon with the biggest bomb in the arsenal. I don't want to go over the top and say it's the best film ever made. It's certainly it's been my favorite film, and I think it's up there in the certainly the best films ever made in America. Is Saturday Night Fever, and I have always loved the soundtrack and the movie. It used to get shown on network TV too, and my mom would watch it. And I would watch it, and I just became a huge fan of it. And it's just it's one of the best. It's one of the very few movies that were extremely popular, and also I think like extremely worthy from an artistic point of view. I don't look at that movie as just being some sort of like pop culture cash in. Um, the song "Staying Alive" in that film, you can just go do this experiment yourself. Watch the footage of John Travolta just walking down the street with the paint cans without the music, and then watch it with the music. I didn't think of this idea. I read this somewhere, and I went and did it, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's the greatest use of music in the history of film." And I don't know if I'd go that far necessarily, but I'd go pretty close to that far. Like I don't know who thought the Bee Gees were going to have a classic disco album in them, especially I just given how ridiculous and absurd some of their 60s stuff is, like such just
Well,
Spinal Tap-esque stuff.
okay. Well,
Go.
okay. We're just gonna trash early Bee Gees. Is that what we're
Yeah,
gonna
if
do?
look if you can listen to the or watch the movie Bee Gees at Cucumber Castle or whatever that is, like it's not even good. It's not even good, like ironically.
Okay, but the music though, we're not talking about the music then. We're just talking about the other stuff.
I do think some of that early '60s or the '60s BG stuff is cringy as hell. Some of it's the
But
greatest stuff ever written, but some of
okay,
it is cringy as hell.
but to love somebody and how can you mend a broken heart?
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah. Even
uh,
Massachusetts is good, but like the one that was the mining disaster, that's crap. Uh, there's a bunch of like Camelot imagery stuff. I can't remember the name of the song. It has like mock monks chanting in it and stuff. Like I've really tried to listen to those first couple. Those are just like teeny bopper magazine product. They're not real albums. But anyway, I don't want to get in there
well,
because
okay,
I'm.
but yeah, I mean, okay, so I mean, just taking like the ones that we mentioned, "Lonely Days, Lonely Nights."
Mhm.
Those are great songs.
Yeah, there are great. Uh, to love somebody. How can you mend a broken heart? All of that. Like those are all. Islands in the Stream is a great song. I don't. If you don't like Islands in the Stream, buzz off. It's great. Like it's great. And their contribution to this, like I know they had Jive Talkin' a couple of years
Yeah.
before this, so they were sort of reinventing themselves
Well,
as like what is a funk trio from Australia? I don't know what.
yeah. I mean, I will agree that the Bee Gees had a high capacity for greatness and also for cheese.
Yeah.
But then the disco era is where I think you get a lot of that cheese. Um, and
Oh.
well, I mean, come on, if you're going to put it out there, um, but
Oh no. Really? Where does that start and end? Like if you want to talk like Shadow
I don't.
Dancing by Andy Gibb, I'll buy that, but not much else.
Yeah, I don't know how you can say that you can point out cheese in the early days of the Bee Gees and not see the cheese in the disco era because there's plenty there. Um,
You know what?
but it's
You are literally blaming it all on the nights on Broadway, and I won't stand for it.
but but anyway, as far as is why they took that turn, I would
They
say it
needed
probably had.
money.
I mean,
Yeah,
what's
they
that?
needed money. I think Robert
Well,
Stigwood, or the guy who owned
exactly.
RSO,
Robert
was an investor in the movie. Yeah,
Yeah, because it was Robert Stigwood's movie, and he managed the Bee Gees, and I think I think the math is pretty simple there.
but that is Robert Stigwood being crass. Because how the heck could he know that that the Bee Gees, which let's just admit they are inauthentic as far as New York disco goes prior to that film. Like
Sure.
it was off-brand for them to be put out there with a straight face as somehow representative of disco culture. They basically bent the will of disco culture their way through the sheer magnitude of the songwriting. And the match made here between Staying Alive and Tony walking down I don't know, I think it's along the West End line in Brooklyn, in like Bensonhurst, where he's walking under the elevated train, and it's just got he's got the John Travolta literal magic energy on him. It's just one of the greatest moments in film, and it's made great by one of the best soundtracks ever and one of the best songs on the best soundtracks ever. And I just don't think, like, if I was to teach a class about music and the way music impacts the way people understand film and how impactful music can be in a film, I would just show this, just Tony Manero walking down the street to Staying Alive, and you pretty much understand everything you need to know to enjoy the movie from that. So I don't, it does pretty much all go downhill, not far, but it does all go downhill from Staying Alive in that the sequence of John Travolta walking down the sidewalk. It just doesn't get better than that. I put on go.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I'm gonna agree that that's an effective sequence. My analysis of it is that the thing about Staying Alive that is good, that I do like, because I wore out on that song, I think, when I was an adolescent, pretty much. But that bass line, that bass line to me is what holds up from that song.
Yeah, that's what makes. I mean, again, for the Bee Gees to pull a disco-worthy bass line out when there's nothing in their '60s categories that think they have a bass line like that in them.
If they're really the ones that came up with the bass line, I mean,
yeah, you're right.
We don't know, but at any rate, I think you could almost take that bass line and apply that to that sequence and have it be effective, just because that bass line is so good. But yeah,
I'm gonna argue that point. I did put, so the deluxe edition of the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack that's out now does include a mix. It's very similar to the original. I don't know what it's called, the Serban mix or Serban mix. And the only part reason I put that version of Staying Alive on it is it has the count in done by Barry Gibb. So the song doesn't just start cold the way that we all know it. It started with the drum beat and Barry counting it down, and you need to hear it. I put if you have even a passing interest in Staying Alive or Saturday Night Fever, go check out the version of that. It's a little bit extended, and it's extended at the beginning, and it has a little bit of a nugget in there. Go listen to that and come back and tell me that the bass line did not need that hi-hat sound and that fat bass drum. No attack, just muffled, beautiful bass drum. It's the drums and the bass. But I like your thinking. I think you're going the right way. Isolating the bass line is such a disco nugget. I'm gonna go along as far as I can with you on that.
I mean, isolating it might be a bit of hyperbole on my part, but
I don't think so.
At any rate, the bass line's doing the heavy lifting in that song. I think we can agree on that.
All right, we do agree on that. I yield my time.
Okay, all right, yield it back.
That's right.
Okay, all right. Well, the next one on my list. So we're going to intros. Like the opening scene to me. I always feel like this is crucial. I don't know of many movies I really love where the opening scene or the opening sequence gets flubbed, like the title sequence. So it's really heavy on my list for sure, and so this will be the first of many. And this is from the Big Lebowski, a Coen Brothers movie, and I'm a longtime Coen Brothers fan, to the point where I saw Big Lebowski when certainly not many people were talking, really nobody was talking about it yet, and it wasn't a big cult hit at this point. And one of the things that really sucked me in was this sequence where it's the opening where the dude, the main character, gets knocked out, and there's like a dream sequence where he's flying on his rug that gets stolen from his apartment, and The Man in Me by Bob Dylan is playing over the sequence. And the first time I saw that, I was just like, that is such an unusual song to pull out, but it was just perfect. It was absolutely the perfect song. Not a really well-known Bob Dylan song, certainly not one of his hits, not one of his big it's very far from being like a Rolling Stone. It was absolutely the perfect song though for this sequence, and I credit it a lot with making me an early adapter to a movie now that everybody knows, but at the time was a movie that had tanked in the box office. Tanked. The Coen brothers were coming off of Fargo, which was really their high water moment, and followed that up with a movie that nobody really went to see.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it from its place in popular culture. There's a few like that, but
yeah.
I would say that the Coen brothers' use of music in film in general, makes them first ballot Hall of Fame on that. I would say, generally speaking.
Yeah, they're my favorite. They're up there with Scorsese as my favorites. They do pretty much everything right, but yeah, use of music is unimpeachable.
Well, I'm going to tie back to a topic because I will defer to you on the topic of Chuck D. But as I recall, in later years, when Chuck D was asked about the line about Elvis, that Chuck D had softened a little bit on Elvis as time went by. Is that your understanding?
Well, wait a minute. We're skipping ahead
switching,
to my next...
Yeah, I'm skipping. I'm going to mine. I'm going to mine now. I'm set. I'm coming. I want to talk about Elvis, but I'm going to use Chuck D as my setup. Do I recall that correctly? Do I recall correctly that Chuck D softened a little bit on Elvis?
I think that's possible. I don't recall it, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, I think I remember reading somewhere that I don't think Chuck would necessarily have walked back anything he said, but I do think he came to see certain traits of Elvis Presley that were not entirely just ridiculous parody of cracker culture.
Well, and I feel like I got to give it away that Fight the Power is the next song on my list. So.
Right. Well, I knew it was coming. We were gonna break the Chuck D seal eventually anyway.
Yeah.
I only feel compelled to do this because I don't want to negate like the criticism of the sort of cultural imperialism of Elvis. I do think Elvis was a fan of black music. I think he laid in bed like loads of people listening to the radio in Memphis at that time and listened, white kids listening to the black music and realizing like that's the stuff they want. Like that's what I'm interested in,
Yeah, I'm a little mixed on this because I kind of think for Elvis to be to do it as well as he did it, I think that was because he really liked it. But at the same time, I do recall in at least one interview where he was talking about rock and roll and saying, well, this is what people like now, and if people stop liking it, I'll find something else to do. So that doesn't speak, that doesn't really say love to me.
Right.
But yeah,
but he did love gospel music, which was in Memphis would have been a big part of his life. Like, I do understand how he can be seen as exploitive, and I don't want to negate that argument at all. I want to suggest that the exploitation of that he was involved in, I think, was as much a decision of the people managing him as himself, as his, you know what I mean? Like this is a young man who was under the thumb of his management the entire time. He never did anything that wasn't planned. He was a pop idol, in a lot of ways.
Nothing that wasn't Colonel Tom approved.
Yeah. Colonel Tom, like, I could much more easily accept just a blanket criticism of Colonel Tom as being an expropriator of things he shouldn't have had his hands on. I think Elvis had genuine reverence for that music as an art form, and I think he had genuine reverence for the people who created it. And I don't mean to say that he was a general, had reverence for people of all stripes. I do mean he certainly specifically had reverence for the individual artists behind the music. So I don't want to go too far trying to absolve Elvis of whatever Elvis culturally owes. I had to do that kind of a preamble because You're So Square, Baby I Don't Care, the dance sequence he does in front of the pool in the movie Jailhouse Rock, like he's biting there. Like I'm this thing of the music reaction videos have grown so much on YouTube, and I watch my fair share of them. And for some reason, Elvis ends up on them a lot. And you'd be surprised how many young people today who are going back and watching that was like, wow, Elvis was kind of filthy. Like Elvis was a dog, like you can hear, and he was. I mean, I was listening to Heartbreak Hotel the other day. That he didn't play the piano solo, but that piano solo is filthy. Anyway, Elvis dancing to You're So Square, Baby, his song, Buddy Holly did it before Elvis, I think. And I love Buddy Holly's version too, but Buddy Holly, he may have played the Apollo Theater, but he wasn't there for his dancing ability, he was Buddy Holly was a little on the square side in that regard compared to Elvis, for sure. Elvis had some moves, he had some swag, and I think you can't really, like, Elvis movies are generally terrible, unwatchable crap, but he is electrifying and fantastic.
Especially the ones where he plays a guy named Rick.
Yeah, like anything. First of all, anything in color is doomed. But like Clam Bake and all that. My mom used to watch that stuff. It's really difficult. But You're So Square, Baby I Don't Care from Jailhouse Rock. That 2 minutes or whatever it is, 1 minute and 53 seconds or whatever it is just, it's the most electric thing caught on film that year. I'm guessing that wasn't the news. I have to put it on air. I love the song. I love it's by Elvis standards. It's hot. It's hot. Then by the 60s, nothing he was doing was hot anymore. It's sort of like peak Elvis, in my opinion, and it's worthy as a moment in film too. One of his very few.
All right, yeah. I mean, I get the Elvis thing. I'm not the biggest Elvis fan in the world, but I'm not anti-Elvis. I guess I don't know. Elvis has never really quite clicked for me. I'll just put it that way. There are certainly, I'll cherry pick some good Elvis moments, and I get why he was a big deal. I get it. But I
wouldn't. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, but it just was never a big thing for me personally.
Yeah, if he moved next door, I would not be happy about it. I wouldn't want him as a neighbor for hundreds of reasons. But if he came through town,
these days, if Elvis were alive, he would be like a big reality TV star.
He'd be a Fox News contributor.
Well, well, hopefully not, but I don't know. But I mean, the thing is that if Elvis were alive, he would have stopped doing music like a long time ago and just would be doing reality TV now.
I haven't thought about that. You might be right, although I think he genuinely loved music. I mean, he was a hillbilly with money. That's that's what I mean when I don't want to move in next to me. It's not, and certainly the fact that he was a volunteer narc for Richard Nixon. I don't want that kind of element in my neighborhood either.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the low points. But yeah, high points musically at 68 comeback special. I think that speaks to a love of music, I would say.
Yeah, he couldn't have been all. I'll put it this way: he wasn't all bad. I'll put it that way.
No, he definitely wasn't. By the way, the reaction videos, I don't really watch these myself, and you recommended one where I don't know, somebody's watching Rush for the first time.
Yeah.
And I watched that, and I really didn't buy the premise because it just seemed to me that how do you know anything about Rush, but you've never heard Spirit of the Radio in your life? I don't buy that premise. I did come across one that I don't know why I decided to watch it, and I don't know if this is somebody that you watch videos of, but I did find this entertaining. There's a guy named Jamel, aka Jamal, I
Oh
believe
yeah,
is.
he's awesome. He's awesome.
Yeah, so I watched him.
He likes the Doobie Brothers too much.
Well, I watched two of them. I watched him react to the band with the Staple Singers doing doing the wait in the last waltz, and I guess that's why I saw that come up on my feed for whatever reason, and I was like, I do want to see what the reaction is of that, and then I watched him react to Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. And I do like his videos because he is so expressive about it.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, and I do totally buy it. Because if he's acting, he's an awesome actor. But his face is so expressive, and it's so his reactions are just so big, and yeah, I don't know if you're into that sort of thing, I would recommend those videos, even though I've only seen two of them.
Yeah,
But,
he's great. India React is great. There's a ton of them. This is relevant to this topic because half the time when people are sending them songs and it starts playing, like when they look at the name, they'll be like, Steelers Wheel, right in the middle with you. I don't know that. And then it'll start off, they'll be like, oh, I know that. It's from this movie. Like the millennials and the Gen Z, these young people doing these reaction videos, like that's why the Redbone "Come and Get Your Love," I think, or is that from which one? Is that Deadpool or one of the? I can't remember which they are.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. Like those songs all get done as reaction videos, and they always just end up talking about the movie. Without that genre of film, they wouldn't have half these songs wouldn't be known at all.
Well, watching a video like that, I wouldn't be into that. But I do like Jamel, because just because of I guess the things that he reacts to is like how soulful something is, and how what the bass player is doing, and just the way he breaks it down, like if it is the first time he's listening to it, he does a great job of breaking down the individual parts of a song, and so it's like I can really appreciate what he's doing there, but I don't.
But the thing is there's a mafia of Steely Dan and Doobie Brothers fans who go around bullying all these reaction video people into constantly. Jamel has done literally like every single Steely Dan song there is, because there's this like group of rabid nerds who like are. You know what it is? The Steely Dan fan has never changed. They've been trying to force their crap on everybody in humanity for as long as that stuff's been around, and now they have these captive people who need views, and they're basically being held hostage to Steely Dan reactions, and I resent it.
Well,
sorry.
I don't think I want any part of that.
You don't. Nor the Michael McDonald. They're obsessed with it. Michael McDonald. Ugh.
I'm going to bow out of that. Okay, so number 4 on my list, or number 3 on my list. We're only up to number 3.
I know, it's good. That's great.
Well, anyway, all right. So yeah, we gave it away a little bit ago, or I did. "Fight the Power" by Public Enemy. Of course, from "Do the Right Thing." I mean, not only is it the song in the opening title sequence, it is a character in the movie itself. I mean, it's literally the only song that Radio Raheem plays on his blaster, and it all through the movie, it is the refrain of the movie, and so it's just like I'm not even pulling out an individual scene here to talk about, but it's the sum of "Do the Right Thing" by Spike Lee.
It is one of the very few songs so good it can handle that level of weight. You know what I mean? Like if I had that song submitted to me for a soundtrack, like I'd find a way to put it in, no matter what kind of auteur or director Spike Lee is. I mean, he's got an ear. Like, there's you couldn't say it's overused, even though it's heavily used. I mean, it's one of the greatest songs ever recorded. I think we have enough history here that nothing since has even been really that just straight up revolutionary. So, yeah, it doesn't get in the way of that movie, but it could carry a movie if it had to. It absolutely could.
Yeah, and an interesting thing about that, like Spike Lee had an idea of what he wanted the song to be before Public Enemy actually recorded anything, and it was entirely different. It was entirely different than what it ended up being. I forget what the song, like he wanted it basically to be a hip hop version of an already existing song, and which it is. Fight the Power was an Isley Brothers song, so it is it is essentially a hip hop version of that song, but it was a different song that Spike Lee wanted to be the basis of that song. And I don't. Oh, so he wanted it to be a hip hop version of Lift Every Voice. And obviously it went an entirely different direction, and so it could have been very different had it been what he actually envisioned.
Yeah, it's great. The only improvement by having it on Fear of a Black Planet is like Fear of a Black Planet happens, and then there's that little musical bridge to just create a little distance for the closer, just that little preparatory vamp. I can't remember what it's called on Fear of a Black Planet, but you just get a little bit of a warm up, and then they're best trained, best prepared, best equipped. Like it's that is so good. It's good in both contexts. All right, I'm really on the nose today. I think that's one of the reasons I was a little hesitant on the topic. Is I'm gonna have to try. I have to get the obvious stuff out of the way, and I don't know if this is obvious for people in America. It might be. I don't watch as much movies as other people, so I'm guessing everybody's seen the original Get Carter with Michael Caine. If you haven't, and you like movies, like I can't think of what the excuse is. The only possible excuse is I believe Sylvester Stallone did a crappy remake of Get Carter at some point, and that might have turned all of humanity off. Ignore all that. Go back and watch the original British film, and it's British as hell, with Michael Caine, called Get Carter. It's got an early analog synthesizer soundtrack through it, and the little theme from Get Carter is one of the greatest earworms of all time, and it's used incredibly effectively throughout this absolutely spectacular film. I'm not British, obviously. I've spent very minimal time in Britain. I've enjoyed it. I enjoy it very much. I love the young ones. Like I probably whenever I work with tons of British people, they're always shocked that I know the music they grew up with probably at least as well as they did, and I did it without ever getting a copy of the NME, so I'm pretty proud of myself. But I'm not like an Anglophile or anything. The movie's great, and the theme from Get Carter is so fantastic. Now, I did not know that when the Human League's Dare came out, which has "Don't You Want Me" on it, which is a fantastic song, and if you hate Don't You Want Me, you hate yourself. On this Human League album with "Don't You Want Me" is a cover of the Get Carter theme. That is the first place I've heard it, and what's amazing, that's the first place I heard it. What's amazing is that it's actually a very faithful rendition of it. So, like, you have this '70s film with Michael Caine, whose theme fits beautifully on a hit album from the Human League in 1982. It's that kind of good. I'm going to put in our playlist Jaw Wobble, the original bassist for Public Image Limited. He has a fantastic solo catalog too. He is one of my, he is my first ballot Hall of Fame favorite bass player of all time. He and his band, the Invaders of the Heart, do a live version of the Get Carter theme as like an Indian raga. Or at least it is a heavy Indian percussion, not really a raga, but it's got a lot of the percussion in it. It's so good. I'm putting that on too. So the Get Carter theme is one of the most effective, like written for film themes that ended up becoming popular songs afterward. I don't know how many other cases there are of that, but Get Carter is that good. And so I put that intro theme on for it's by Roy Budd, but I'm also going to put the Human League and Jaw Wobble versions up too.
All right. My number 5, or number 4. I keep on moving ahead. My number 4 song, another opening title sequence, and one that that I think is particularly good. And of course, this is a song that I've talked about ad nauseum. I understand on various episodes of this podcast. It is one of my all-time favorite songs. Period. It's Iggy Pop's "Lust for Life" from the album "Lust for Life," and it is featured, of course, in the opening, in the title sequence of Trainspotting, and it's the montage that introduces Mark Renton and his friends, and just the a lot of opening sequences that I like a lot are almost short films in themselves, and then I think this is one where the sequence is just so good and does such a concise job of introducing the characters and the premise of the film, that it's really like just a mini film. And Danny Boyle, I think, is just an excellent filmmaker, and even so, like, there just isn't. I think this is still like the high point of his career, even though his career has been nothing but stellar. But Trainspotting is, as well as this song, is just a personal favorite of mine.
I feel you. All right, I got to be on the nose now for another couple in a row, and I have to confess, I don't think I've actually seen this movie all the way through, but I don't think I needed to. I am taking the title track from the Beatles' "Hard Day's Night," which I know more from the trailer than I do from the movie itself. But that, from what I've seen of the Beatles movies, they're all intolerable and terrible.
No. What?
Yeah. Help is okay.
What?
Ish. Yellow Submarine sucks. They're all. And Magical Mystery Tour sucks.
Okay, well, Magical Miss. Okay, you're pulling out the two worst ones and saying that they all suck, though. Hard Day's Night. Hard Day's Night is a really good movie, and
right.
Help is a pretty good movie.
All right. Well, okay. They're good. I'm not. I find them hard. I think it would have been much more interesting to just listen to like 90 minutes of them talking backstage. I think I would have been much more interested in that.
See, when you told me you're putting Hard Day's Night on here, I had no idea that you're going to trash a good movie.
I'm not trashing it. It's an exploitation film.
Well, Richard Lester was a very capable filmmaker, and he made Hard Day's Night and he made Help. Those are two good movies. Right. Hard Day's Night is especially good.
All right. Well, the very capable filmmaking that is represented in Hard Day's Night, I am not an expert on, and I should not comment. I love the trailer, though, and I admitted that I haven't watched the whole thing, so I did say that first. And it's because I couldn't finish it. But that thing of them running and being chased, the thing where George falls and gets right back up, like, that's not in character. You know what I mean? Like, he fell. He genuinely fell, and he got up, like, ready for his close-up. It's pretty great. Like, that's a great moment captured on film. It's because it's authentically George. And the song is great. I actually think Hard Day's Night soundtrack is, I don't want to get too hot take with it. Like, it's not the equivalent of Revolver, but it needs to be discussed in their Holy of Holies. And I think the Help soundtrack, too. Well, I think they are both very seriously artistic, heavy-duty artistic pieces, which the films aren't. I really love Hard Day's Night soundtrack. I've always thought it's great.
I think Hard Day's Night is the first Beatles record that's really an album. Like everything leading up to it is kind of a hodgepodge. Hard Day's Night is I believe 100% originals, and it's the first cohesive album, I think, that the Beatles had to offer.
Well, I grew up in the house of a Beatle fanatic. My mother saw the Beatles every chance she could, every time they came through Chicago. She was insane in love with them, but sort of she got married and had, and her life changed a little bit. So she was definitely skewed more towards the early Beatles. What's hard for people in America now to understand is that the Beatles records in America were different than the ones we all know now. So you'd have to go find the American versions of the Beatles albums, and you'll see a bunch of albums that you're like, I didn't know the Beatles had an album called Beatles 65 or whatever they are.
Well, I'm not even talking about those ones. I'm talking if you just take the British one, the
No.
British albums.
Yeah, I get it. But the American version of Hard Day's Night came out as a soundtrack that had one side of Beatles songs and one side of like actual movie soundtrack, like just background music from the movie. It was terrible. I didn't even know the original album until the CD reissues were put out in what, like the late mid, like what? When did the CD Beatles reissues come out?
Sometime in the 80s.
Yeah, most Americans have never even heard that album until the 80s, and I'm one of them, and so I love it. It's so good, and you're right. It's their first, I think, an album that is it's maybe an A-, but you have to grade it an A-, I think, no lower.
Yeah, and well, and they did follow that up with Beatles for Sale, which is another kind of hodgepodgey one.
Yeah.
But then Help was after that, and that's another one. But yeah, Hard Day's Night was 100% Lennon and McCartney originals. They weren't covering, the Crickets and things like that. Which that stuff's fine, but they had enough of their originals to fill up a full album, and it was good stuff.
Yeah, it's a great album. You should get there. I think radio is biased towards the late Beatles, and people are not listening to as much of that early stuff as they should, and you just can't go wrong with Hard Day's Night soundtrack. It's great.
Okay, my next one. So we don't talk much sports on this show. I love sports, especially baseball. I guess I've talked about Liverpool some on Liverpool football some on the show, but we haven't talked much sports. But my favorite all-time sports movie is Bull Durham. It's a movie based on minor league baseball. I grew up on minor league baseball, and Bull Durham really captures what that was like in that era. Of course, now there's a lot more money even in minor league baseball, so it doesn't have that same kind of charm that it did back then. The movie came out in 1988, and just one of those moments that I think just captures the spirit of the minor leagues is a scene where the team is slumping. And the Durham Bulls, they're slumping, and Crash Davis, who's like this veteran catcher who's sent down to kind of coach up the big bonus baby, high draft pick pitching prospect. He tells them, well, I can get us a rain out. Getting a day off is basically the cure for the ills of the team. And he breaks into the ballpark with his teammates in the middle of the night, and turns on the sprinklers, and they slide around the field, and it's a lot of fun. And one of the things that really kind of seals the deal on the move is the song "I Got Loaded" by Los Lobos. It's just a perfect fit for the feeling and the charm of the scene and the movie itself, and that is my number 5 song on my playlist here.
Now, one day we're going to do a Slash Records episode. We're going to talk more about Los Lobos. They don't get talked about enough. I'm going to go really hard on the nose here, and I'm going to pick from the movie Spinal Tap. I am unashamed. I feel like that's one of the like you and I, we may like the same artists for different reasons or same albums for different reasons. It does extend the movies a little bit, I think, but we would both, I think, we're both lifelong Spinal Tap nuts, right? Like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
the only person I ever knew who had is it the Criterion version that had the whole subplot with the opening act and stuff like that? Like you're the
Well,
only person I know who bought that in its time.
I have the Criterion Laserdisc as well as the Criterion DVD, which the DVD was both of those things were hard to track down. Actually, the uh, the Criterion DVD was the first version of Spinal Tap on DVD, and it was quickly out of print because Criterion is a company, that they're not really in it for the profit, and so they have a hard time keeping certain titles. Like for instance, they'll put out a Criterion version of, say, RoboCop, because that will sell a few more units, and basically that will fund a lot of the other titles.
Yeah.
But they have a hard time keeping a lot of the titles in print, and Spinal Tap was no exception to that. But yeah, I have not only one but two different Criterion versions of that film.
You could pick any song from the movie. There's some stuff on the soundtrack that I don't think is featured in full in the movie, but it's mostly all there. You can't lose. This time I decided to counter program my normal favorites, and I went with Sex Farm because we lost Fred Willard this year. I like not only do I love Spinal Tap, like I pretty much love all the Christopher Guest mockumentary films, or pretty much anything he's done I've enjoyed. But Sex Farm is where Fred Willard makes his appearance in Spinal Tap. I don't think you have a good Christopher Guest. Fred Willard delivers in every single one of those films. I guess he was not necessarily the nicest person off screen, but for whatever reason,
Well, wait, where'd you hear that?
I've heard that he was not necessarily. He I believe had some a few public run-ins that would not be.
Well,
They impugn character, I'll say.
okay, you better come correct on this, because I don't
All
think
right,
that this is true.
really.
I Yeah, I know plenty of people that know him. I've never heard a bad word about him. Or I should say knew him. But I've never heard a bad word about Fred Willard.
All right. Well, if I'm incorrect on this, it's not because I'm not a fan. I love his appearances in all of the Christopher Guest movies, and every every word of his appearance here is to me is quotable. I just pointing at the back of your head saying I'm a little shaggy myself. I don't know. Is that it's not, I think you have to be a Fred Willard fan, maybe a Spinal Tap fanatic, but every moment of the visit to the Air Force Base, which is where they're doing Sex Farm, I think is it's a staggering work of heartbreaking genius, and Sex Farm is as good as any from Spinal Tap, which is to this day it's perfect. And how many movies do you have that are a 10? They could not be made better or worse in any possible way. They are literally Jenga'd perfectly together. It's a 10. It's a 10, and every minute of the
Well,
song is a 10.
I agree that it is a 10. Most of the movies that I have songs on my list from, I feel the same way about, but certainly Spinal Tap is
Uh,
I
all right.
certainly agree on
I'm
that.
sorry to do this, but I felt obligated to come correct. On July 18th, 2012, this is from Wikipedia, Mr. Willard was arrested on suspicion of engaging in a misdemeanor lewd act in an adult theater on Santa Monica Boulevard and was brought to
Uh,
the LAPD Hollywood station. No
well,
charges were filed, though. So he described the incident as very painful and very embarrassing, but that he did nothing wrong. He had to take a sex education diversion program. So
okay.
I don't know
Well,
if that makes him bad or not, but
so that's certainly not no proven facts there.
well, he was arrested at an adult theater. That
Well,
much is
but
true, to
that's
quote Human League.
but
But yes,
uh, that isn't against the law, though.
no, it is. Well, 2012. Wow, to be 2012. I guess I don't know. I guess that's why the famous like LA so much is they usually get left alone when they just go do stuff. All right. Well, look, that was what I was remembering. I didn't realize that he was never charged or anything. So I was just making a vague reference that I was aware there was something in his past, and I'm vaguely aware now there was something in his past.
Okay, yeah, but at the same time, I think we've forgiven Pee Wee Herman at this point. So even if that were true, I think we could probably
Yeah, you could
probably
make a case for tequila, couldn't you? Anyway, all right, carry on.
yeah
Go on.
yeah wasn't transitioning, but it did bring to mind Pee Wee Herman. I think we've all made amends with Pee Wee Herman at this point, right?
Yes, he is certainly he owes me nothing.
Yeah, and yeah. So at this point, I think we are looking at a part two of this. So we will wrap it up here because we've both done the same amount, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we've done 5 so far. We have plenty more. So we will pick this up next week, and then I will just give a quick preview. We have yet to, you may be thinking to yourself, and if you're interested in this topic, I bet you are. I bet you're thinking, well, wait a minute, what about Martin Scorsese? And I would say, yes, I agree. He absolutely deserves a place on this list because he almost invented this as a genre, I would say, as far as using music in film. And nobody really did it. I won't say he's the first to do it, but he was certainly the first to really, I think, make it noticeable. And I don't think anybody's ever done it better. And he will certainly have a place on my list because I think we could easily do a whole show on him.
That is a debatable point, but not. I feel you. I see. I can concede the point for now. But yes, we haven't even touched John Hughes yet. That
We
will be
haven't done that
rectified.
either.
That will be
Yeah,
rectified on the next episode for sure.
yeah. It is coming. I will tell you right now. I will be picking it up with Martin Scorsese on the next episode of Left of the Dial.
We'll see you then.
See you next week.